Hey guys, welcome back to Analog Daydreams, and you guys are watching the start of a brand new video series called Let's Talk. So the format of this series is that I'm going to talk about an album, an artist, a type of album, compilation albums, live albums, etc., or a discography, and I want you guys to add on to it in the comments below. So I figured today's perfect starting point would be best of albums and greatest hits albums. I have a nice collection of them. Some I have on vinyl, some I have on CD and cassette. And today we're going to talk about the different types and go into some of these. So, the reason why I chose to do this is that I just felt like, it would be kind of fun to go into some of these albums into detail because you have different types of compilations like this. And I'm not talking like B-side compilations or outtakes and stuff like that. Purely talking about best ofs and greatest hits. And you have instances where the artists have no involvement in the compilations, or you have ones that come out after they've passed, or you have ones that bands or artists put out to get out of a record deal. And I have a wide array of these. And, let's talk about them. So, in this first pile here, I have what I like to consider to be the most popular best ofs and greatest hits. And, of course, you can't really start this conversation without mentioning the most popular greatest hits album of all time, the Eagles' Best of, 1971 to 1975, I believe. Um, this was a record that everyone had back in the day on vinyl. Um, and I mean, this is a classic record. It has all of their well known hits: Witchy Woman, Lion Eyes, Desperado, Tequila Sunrise, Take It Easy. It has all their early hits, I should say. Because later on they would go on to release Hotel California, which is one of the most well recognized rock albums of all time. They had the record after that, which I believe was called Take It to the Limit, and that's the one that has Heartache Tonight on it. And then they did the live record, and they disbanded until '94, I think, with Hell Freezes Over, and occasionally they still go out on tour and play. Recently they did the Vegas residency at the Sphere, and, this was one of those records that growing up I heard a lot, a lot of well recognized songs that you hear on the radio, and that's what these compilations usually are. They're kind of a way for people to get into the artist, or for casual music fans, sorry there, casual music fans, to discover um, singles or hits and whatnot. And this is one of those records. Now, it's very interesting to note that in the streaming era, greatest hits albums aren't really a thing. Now, there has been some that have come out recently in the last couple of years. Father John Misty just put one out last year. The Weeknd put out highlights a couple of years back, so you still get them. But, back then that was the thing to do to get out of the record deal, or to hold the fans over for a while before you release your next, album or so. And a lot of the bigger artists did that. And, it was the thing to do back then. To put out one of these, let it sell, get some money from that, go do your next record. Now, that wasn't the case if, you know, for the Rolling Stones on Hot Rocks and stuff like that. Whereas for that record, they signed their rights over to ABKCO, I believe. From the 63 to 70 period, they put out Hot Rocks and, more Hot Rocks, and I believe the London Singles Collection years down the line. There was Metamorphosis. There was a whole bunch of Stones compilations that came from ABKCO Records, or I guess you could say Decca, from the earlier Stones period. The Stones had no involvement in Of course, if we're talking about the Stones and their millions of greatest hits records or compilation records, this is a really good one. 40 Licks is, in my opinion, the best Stones compilation record regarding, a greatest hits collection or best of. I know there's Rewind that came out, that's another good one, but that kind of focuses on the 70s period, 70s, 80s period. This focuses on pretty much everything up until 2002 with like three new songs. And that's the selling point, I feel like, for collectors like me with these records. Excuse me. They come with new tracks. For instance, Decade of Decadence. This is my favorite compilation record ever. You get Angela, which is my favorite Motley Crue song that they still haven't played live, and I don't think I'd want to hear them play it live now, but if this was 35 years ago, absolutely. But, for stuff like this, there's three new tracks, alternate mixes. This is how, in my opinion, a greatest hits record or a compilation record should look like. You get three remixes, my bad. You get some rarities, you get a live version of Kickstart My Heart, arguably their most popular song. And then you get, their cover of the Sex Pistols' Anarchy in the UK. You get Angela, Primal Scream, Teaser, Rock and Roll Junkie. Those were new tracks at the time, but you get stuff like that. You get some rarities, some B-sides, and the hits. And that's great, you know, for that reason. Now, if we're talking about the most popular compilation records or best ofs and stuff in that regard, then you can't forget about this one, Legend, the best of Bob Marley. And for me, I'm not a huge Bob Marley fan, but I feel like for me, this is a good collection, to just put it on and listen to it if I'm in the mood for that. That's kind of why I got this record. And I always see this at a thrift store. Not on CD though, more so on vinyl, which is very interesting. There's like a mid '80s vinyl pressing that I've seen quite a bit at thrift stores over the time. I believe it was a Columbia House pressing or something along those lines. Even though this was on Island Records, I believe it was one of those house pressings or catalog pressings, which is very interesting. But I would always see it. It would always be like behind the counter. They would always overprice it a little bit, because some thrift stores do that, and that might be another topic in the Let's Talk series. I want this series to be kind of a collaborative thing between me and you guys. I want you guys to suggest what topics you want to hear me talk about, like favorite concerts, worst concert experiences, and stuff along that line. But, going back to the topic of discussion today, this is one of the most popular compilation records ever. I see it everywhere. A lot of people have this in their collection because it's a good compilation record. It does a good job. You get all the hits on here. Stir It Up, I Shot the Sheriff, Three Little Birds, Redemption Song, Exodus, and stuff like that. And the cool thing about this is you get little blurbs about why this is on here and what it is. Usually you get that with these kind of things. You get a nice little booklet and some info to go along with it, but for these early, CD pressings from the 80s, that's not really the case. With this, you get kind of like a two-page insert and the disc, but for some reason, I love these early 80s CD pressings just because they look cool to me. I always try to get early CD pressings if I can, but back then liner notes weren't really a thing in CDs with these early pressings, and then of course later on down the line when reissues came out, you know, different story, more details and stuff like that. And I always see this at Walmart in the CD section, or I used to see it a lot in the $5 bin, back when Walmart had a $5 bin. And there's one of these records in here that I did get in the fabled Walmart $5 bin that I'll talk about a little bit later. So, another popular record, of course, or compilation record, is the Beatles' Number Ones album, or the Beatles' Number One album. And what this is all of their number one singles from the UK and America on one disc. You get 27 songs on one disc. Later on down the line, I believe they did a, remastered version and an expanded version. Sorry, guys, I had a allergy attack there for a second. Anywho, this record compiles, all of their well-known number one hits and all of that, and it was later remastered and expanded upon, like the Red and Blue albums were in 2015. And I do have the Beatles Blue album. I have an original copy, of course. I don't like that they expanded on those back in 2023. I felt that was kind of like a cash grab move, to expand on the Beatles Blue album, adding Now and Then, stuff like that, when that wasn't even released in that time period. They should have just given the other two anthology tracks, Real Love and Free as a Bird, in that package as well, but they didn't. But there's tons of these regarding the Beatles. There was rock and roll music in the 70s, I believe. Then they split those up to make those more budget friendly or budget releases towards the tail end of the 70s, going into the 80s. Of course, you have real music, which is all their music from the movies that they did, like Hard Day's Night, Magical Mystery Tour, and Yellow Submarine, stuff like that. But this was a really big record. I believe this was the best-selling record of the 2000s in America, which is crazy. It sold over 30 million copies. And the crazy thing is, I never really see it anymore, This one I found at a thrift store. But that's a record that either I see at a record store in the $5 CD bin, or I don't see it at all. To find it at a thrift store is pretty interesting. But, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, of course. And going into the next category, we can't forget about Prince's Hits Volume 1, which is an interesting track listing. There is some hits on here, of course. You get Pop Life, you get, you get Sign of the Times, you get Prince's live version of Nothing Compares to You. It's a really interesting, compilation because it doesn't have, like, the well-known hits on it. It doesn't have Purple Rain, it doesn't have Little Red Corvette, it doesn't have, Raspberry Beret. That stuff's on Greatest Hits Volume 2. And Greatest Hits Volume 2, of course, is the more expensive, compilation in regards to these two. I almost see this one for like $6, $7, because everyone wants the Hits Volume 2 because that's what has all of the, mega famous Prince songs. But that was an interesting compilation that came out at the time in 1991, I believe. That was kind of around the whole time when Prince changed his name, of course, and the Gold Experience would later come out. But segueing from that to this pile, which is my best of pile, we have John Lennon's Legend compilation. Now, this, in my opinion, is the definitive. It's either this or Give Me Some Truth that came out in 2020, but this is a good one because you get pretty much all the essential Lennon stuff. You get all the singles, basically. All the singles and all the extra bits and pieces. You get Happy, Christmas, War is Over. that mega, you know, successful, popular Christmas tune that everyone knows. And where that's positioned on this record is kind of weird. That's number 19. You would think that would be number 20. I wouldn't want to go from Working Class Hero to Happy Christmas, War is Over, and to Give Peace a Chance. It's kind of a throw off in a way, but this was redone in '97, I believe, because the other two compilations, Shaved Fish and the Ultimate John Lennon Collection, I believe, didn't have anything from Milk and Honey, I think. I know Shaved Fish didn't have anything from Milk and Honey, so this was kind of like a thing to put stuff from Milk and Honey into, you know, throw that into there for a full package of, you know, Lennon hits and stuff like that. This is one of my absolute favorites, The Best of Bowie. Now, I'm a big Bowie fan, and I have a lot of his records, so really, you know, there isn't really any reason for me to get this, but you do get the original version of Cat People Putting Out Fire on here, which when I first bought this, back when I was 17, I was kind of disappointed because I love the Let's Dance version of that song. I was thinking that was the Let's Dance version, but it isn't. Um, it's the original soundtrack version, the darker, more moody, um, version. But this is another one of those best ofs that's literally a great collection. There's no skips on this. You get Bowie's version of All the Young Dudes on here. Of course, you get Under the God by Tin Machine, which Tin Machine's a very controversial Bowie project. You either like it or you don't. It's one of those things that he did that it took me a while to get into, but I absolutely love it. I believe you get the Trent Reznor version of I'm Afraid of Americans, which is awesome. Um, it jumps off right at Slow Burn, so right before '02, I think, that last record released before that. So you get about a good 20 to 25 years of Bowie. Um, you get all the essential stuff, you know. Of course, in different countries, there's different track listings for this record. And I believe there's a different version in America. Um, but, you get all the hits on here. It's another good one. A really cool cover. This was remastered, I believe, in 2012 too, or reissued in 2012. Here's another one of those compilations that I mentioned earlier, or one of the compilations mentioned earlier, where the artist had no involvement, and that is The Smiths with their Best of Volume 1. And now this was marketed towards the American audience, and I believe there's 3 or 4 of these, and these are very interesting because there are some interesting track listing choices on these. Now, in my opinion, this isn't the definitive or the go-to for Smith's best of. The Sound of the Smiths is a really good compilation, and the deluxe version of that, I think, is the best. This, I got this, just to fill a hole in my collection. I didn't have anything by the Smiths. That wasn't a 7-inch single. I have a few 7-inch singles of the Smiths, but no full albums, and this was the cheapest, and that's normally what I take into consideration with these kind of things, or with albums. If I can get a best of for $2.99 as opposed to a regular album for $6.99, I'll go for the best of. It starts off with this charming man. It goes all the way to Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want, which was later made popular by Deftones, even though that was a big song to begin with. But the Smiths were never a big deal in America when they were around, in their heyday. They charted here or there, but they weren't super duper successful. And this was an attempt in the early 90s to break the Smiths, while Morrissey was having a big run, his big solo run. Now we're going to move a little bit quickly here. Here's some of my favorite best of compilations. We have the Best of New Order. You don't get a Perfect Kiss, which is like my favorite, you know, New Order song. But you do get a good little collection of New Order. You know, you get some really cool versions on here and stuff like that. And a lot of the times with these compilations, especially the singles records, you get stuff that's edited down. You get 7-inch mixes or radio mixes, as you like to call them, which can be kind of misleading in a way, you know, to get a best of record and you're thinking you're getting the full song, but really you're getting the radio version that's been watered down to about 2 minutes or 3 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that. But yeah, this is another one of my favorite best of compilations. This is Counting Crows, Films About Ghosts. And I know it's not cool to like the Counting Crows to some people, but they're one of those artists that I have a soft spot for. You know, growing up, Accidentally in Love from the Shrek soundtrack was all over radio, and you know, you get songs like Long December on here, Hanging Around, which, oh no, it was Big Yellow Taxi, my bad. Big Yellow Taxi, if you ever go to like a Publix in Florida, or like a Kroger in Columbus or whatever, you're bound to hear that song. A true grocery store anthem, in my opinion. As someone who worked at a grocery store, a true grocery store anthem. But you get a lot of their well-known hits here, a lot of their good songs, in my opinion, minus Have You Seen Me Lately, which is my favorite, of course, but um, you get 3 new recordings here, 2 new recordings here, and you know that's just another thing about these compilation records. For the hardcore fans, for the collectors, they aim towards putting out unreleased material, so that way there's an incentive there to buy for the collectors to buy. So, moving on, we have the singles compilations, which singles compilations um, just feature all the singles in order, and sometimes they come with the B-sides. You know, there's some singles records that have the A side there, the B side on the next track, but 9 times out of 10, it's just the A sides and it falls in an order. This is another definitive singles collection, in my opinion. This is the Pet Shop Boys discography, the complete singles. You get West End Girls, their most popular hit. You get Opportunities, Suburbia, It's a Sin, Domino Dancing, Being Boring. I think there might be 2 new songs in this one as well. I'm not too sure. But overall, it's a great compilation, a great starting point for this group. One of the definitive 80s acts, in my opinion. And I almost never see their records. So when I saw this, I had to jump on it. Because it's another thing for me to find some of these artists in my local record shops and stuff like that. You know, it comes down to availability. If they don't have a record or a regular studio album or a live album, then I'll go for this. And, you know, moving on, we have the Clash's singles. For me, this is pretty much all I need from the Clash. You know, I like the Clash. I liked them a lot more when I was like 14, getting into punk rock and stuff like that. But for when I go back, this is one of those compilations that just rounds all the bases for me. You know, this is a home run for me. You know, you get White Riot, you get This Is England off of, I believe, Cut the Crap, the last Clash record that was released. I Fought the Law, of course, Rock the Casbah, London Calling, Should I Stay or Should I Go? You know, those songs that are still on the radio this day, especially Rock the Casbah. And it kind of starts off with, it starts off with London Calling, and it stays steady. It stays with their well-known songs. And that's what I kind of like, you know. You go from I Fought the Law to White Man and the Hammersmith Palaces, which is a great tune. And, you know, it's just a nice, well-rounded collection of The Clash, which is perfect. I'll pop it on sometimes, read a book, excuse me, or just zone out to it or hang out and listen to it. And that's what's nice about those. And another one of those is Depeche Mode's singles 1986 to 1998, I believe. Um, and this is another one. It collects everything from the 86 record all the way from Violator to um, that record that came out in 97. But what's weird about this, it ends off with Everything Counts Live, which is from that live record that came out in 89. Overall, though, this is a great singles comp. It's on 2 discs, 2 disc compilation set. Um, the 2 discs are fun. I always try to get the 2 disc compilation sets. More bang for your buck. Um, of course, we can't move on without talking about the first Cure singles collection, Staring at the Sea, and I have the follow-up, Galore, as well on CD. For me, same thing. I love The Cure, um, but I really just want the singles from them time and time out or whatever. I just want to hear the singles. I want to hear the songs that I know. I want to hear some of the, album cuts that weren't as big hits. And this does a great job. It has some of my favorite songs by them here. Forest, The Love Cats, In Between Days, which is like top 5, one of my favorite Cure songs. And it's a really cool cover. I believe this guy here was a fisherman, and he posed for the album cover. And I believe they gave him some royalties to it. There's a really cool story behind this, of course. And this is the early CD pressing. I believe this is the first CD pressing, which is why I had to pick it up. And it sounds brilliant. It sounds brilliant on my setup. So the next little subtopic that I want to talk about in this video is what I like to call the weird compilations, or the interesting ones, or the semi-interesting ones, or the ones that don't really fit the categories in this video. So, the first one here in this pile is Guns N' Roses' Greatest Hits. Now, this has no involvement from Guns N' Roses at all. No involvement whatsoever from them. This was released by Geffen at the time in '04, I guess, to cut the costs from Chinese Democracy, or the ongoing Chinese Democracy sessions that Axl Rose was doing from, I think, 97 to up until 2008. And, I almost avoid these unless if I can find these at a good price, and I got this on sale at some record store a while back ago, many years ago. And, for me, this has just a good track listing. It has all the essentials. Patience is on here. You get the more interesting stuff on here, though. In my opinion, you get Since I Don't Have You and Sympathy for the Devil, their cover, which isn't on any other record, I believe. You have to buy the film soundtracks for those, or the respective single or whatever for those two. This is a really weird one in my opinion, because this inner image is inverted. If you look this up, this image right here, it's the other way around. I believe Slash is right there, and Axl's right here. Also, the disc art is not pleasant. I get the whole aesthetic of, it's rough, and Guns N' Roses are rough, but, if you didn't know any better, this would give you a literal panic attack as a collector, and that's what it did for me. It gave me a panic attack. I thought my disc was all scratched up when I first got this, until I saw that, that's just what it was. Another interesting compilation in this pile is Come Dancing with the Kinks, the best of 1977 and 1986. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because this was the last thing they put out on Arista Records, Clive Davis's label, or what was his label that he started. And this is a really interesting period of the Kinks that doesn't really get talked about a lot. at this point, the Kinks were kind of long gone from their big period of the 70s or 60s, early 70s, and there isn't a lot of compilations that follow this period, and this is like the only one. You get some interesting live versions of Lola and You Really Got Me, um, which, I get the live record that those are from came out in this time period, but it feels kind of cheap to put those two on there, two of their most popular songs. It would have been nice to get something different, um, to get something different, something off of those other records, maybe a deep cut or something like that. But this was released so they could get out of their deal with their Arista and to, you know, um, moving on from the Kinks compilation. Sorry about that, guys. I had to put my phone on the charger. It was dying. So, moving on from that, we have the Essential Michael Jackson. Now, these right here are part of the Legacy series. And of course, the Legacy series is just one of those things that, um, artists signed to, or estates of artists signed to put out records and stuff like that. It's just an imprint label, um, and this this is a really good compilation in my opinion. But there's a ton of these out here. There's an Essential Bob Dylan, an Essential Cheap Trick, the Essential Foo Fighters, stuff like that. Where labels like Epic, Columbia, Atlantic even put out these compilations, and usually these are to get out of a record deal, much like this one that was released on Arista. Um, you know, this one I believe is still out of print. Um, Now some of these are on vinyl, like the Bob Dylan one and the Foo Fighters one, but I don't think this one's on vinyl. I might be wrong. For me, the reason why I got this one is because I didn't have any Michael Jackson in my collection, apart from Jackson 5 and some singles and stuff like that. Now, one of the first CDs I bought when I was about 7 or 8 years old was Michael Jackson's The Number Ones, that compilation. I'd heard that at a record store with my family, and I wanted it. Um, I think I heard the song Beat It, which is a big hit, of course, but to me, being 8 years old, and I don't think I'd ever heard anything like that on the radio. I certainly didn't hear that Michael Jackson song on the radio. Um, so that was kind of the reason why I wanted it, and I played that thing over and over again. And about last summer, I was at my local thrift store, and there was a bunch of brand new CDs that came in. And this person who, I guess, had their collection, you know, turned into the local thrift store or whatever, had a bunch of Michael Jackson prints and stuff like that. And there was a brand new sealed copy of that Michael Jackson's Number Ones. And I almost got it, but I saw this because this had more songs, and it was the same price. This was brand new, still sealed. This has "The Girl Is Mine," the song with McCartney. That was the main reason why I bought this. It has "Do You Remember the Time," "Remember the Time," which is like my favorite Michael Jackson song. "Smooth Criminals" on here, "Black or White," later day Michael Jackson stuff from the 90s and 2000s is on here, and this is overall a really good compilation. Um, and you could find those for about any artist under that Essential series, and this here was the follow-up, because the Essential series is often a 2-disc or 3-disc set, like the Essential Billy Joel is a 2-disc set. Now these playlists were put out in 2008, and these are single disc sets. And these two are very weird in my opinion. A lot of these are very weird for what they feature. And we'll get to that in a second. Now, the reason why these came out were for a cheaper option for casual music fans or casual people or music listeners to pick up, the very best. Um, Now, the artists had no involvement in this because, they both had passed on by this point when this came out. But these were very, very controversial topics amongst CD collectors when these came out because, these are digipacks and there's no way for the CD to be held. You kind of have to push it down in there. Um, and so they almost abandoned these right away. And if you see these now, like this one, they're in a jewel case. And this is Journey's Greatest Hits Live. I got this at the $5 bin at Walmart. That's what I was talking about earlier. Um, I've lost both sides of the artwork to this. I don't know where they went. They might have went into my middle school binder back in the day, but these two right here are very interesting because this one is literally an Elvis singles release, minus 3 tracks: Suspicion, Guitar Man, and one of the early tracks from the first Elvis record. Um, so it's really weird, and it's a really weird Elvis track listing. Um, I believe this was the later day, movie soundtrack stuff or 60 singles. You have It's Now or Never, In the Ghettos on here, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. Of course, what is an Elvis compilation without Burning Love? Because Burning Love is on every Elvis compilation, and that is a great song. That is one of my favorite Elvis songs. Not my favorite, but one of my favorite Elvis songs. And the whole selling point of this was what makes a perfect playlist. This is a life-changing, or this features the life-changing songs, the out-of-print tracks, the fan favorites, what makes the artist who they are. And the other controversial subject with these is that it didn't come with a booklet. The booklets were PDFs. You had to download the link or put the CD into your computer, and you'd get the liner notes and stuff like that. And for this one, this is really weird because you have the San Quentin live album, and you have the Folsom Prison live album tracks making an appearance on here. But you get stuff that's literally from the Ring of Fire best of album. So you get a weird mishmash. And for me, I have some Johnny Cash cassettes, but this is just another one of those things that I found at a thrift store, added to the collection because I don't have much Johnny Cash, and this seems to round all the bases for me regarding that. Um, these two are really weird, and these records or these CDs or albums are really weird. I almost don't see them anymore. I used to see these at a Dollar General back in the day, or at Dollar General or Family Dollar, and they used to be $4.99. Back when Family Dollar and Dollar General sell CDs. I've noticed though, if you go to your local Dollar General and you go to the clearance section, they have the re-recorded greatest hits albums or whatever. The fantastic hits of the '70s, featuring like the OJs or those kind of artists or whatever, or the McCoys. The band that did Hang On Sloopy, and it's re-recorded from like 1986 because back then the artists didn't have like the rights to the songs, so they had to re-record them, or there's various different reasons for that. And for this one, this is literally Greatest Hits Live by Journey. This is that record, and this is a great live record, a really good live record that sounds great. This was one of my favorite records when I was a teenager. I used to pop it in my CD player all the time and jam out to it. And before doing this video, I was listening to it, and I was getting back some of that nostalgia. I was really into that kind of music when I was 13, 14. I still have a love for it. I'm a collector at the end of the day, so I collect things that move me and things that I love. But yeah, so here we have No Doubt's Icon, which this is another one of those things. This isn't a legacy release, but this is another one of those things like the Essential series that you'll see. There's almost an icon for every band or artist or rock adjacent artist. There's one for Poison, Rat, all those 80s bands have one, or the big 80s hair metal bands have one. Now, if you see my earlier video, or the earlier Fresh Finds video, episode 2, I believe, I got this from You Discover Music, and this was like $2.99. So I couldn't pass this up for $2.99 because this is quite literally their singles collection from 2003 that came out, just repackaged with the 2011 or 2010 2011 reunion that they did, which later featured the 2012 record, which is at this point the last, the final, or the last and final No Doubt record until they get back together in the future, which might happen. I know they're getting back together at the end of this month on the 30th at the Forum for the benefit concert, which is really cool. So, the last thing that I want to talk about in this little section, the last album that I want to talk about in this little section is this one, Red Hot Chili Peppers' What Hits. And this is a really weird, record in the sense that it has, Higher Ground on it. It features Under the Bridge, which is really weird because Under the Bridge, or when they released Blood Sugar Sex Magic, they weren't on EMI. I believe they were on Warner. I want to say they were on Warner. I think they were on Warner. I'll fact check it, or someone fact check me in the comments below. If you watched to this point, sorry that this is a lot of yapping, but that's what this series is. This is, a series for people who want to watch long videos. But getting back on subject here, um, this is a really weird compilation because it features their early stuff, the pre-Blood Sugar Sex Magic stuff, albeit Under the Bridge. And the reason why Under the Bridge features on here is because I believe Red Hot Chili Peppers have one more album that they had to put out with this label, and I believe them and Warner, whoever their label was at the time in '91, came to an agreement over which song they wanted to use for their respective greatest hits records, or their respective best of or whatever. And I believe Warner, whoever it was, took Higher Ground, and EMI took Under the Bridge. And you can find this one for really cheap. I think this is like the cheapest Red Hot Chili Peppers record in their catalog when it comes to used CDs. I mean, this one's always like $2.99, $3.99. I got this on eBay last year before my birthday, because I'm a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. I wanted to get into the earlier period, and I didn't know much about the earlier period other than who was in the band and what had happened. And of course, I've heard Higher Ground on classic rock radio. That was almost played like, to death 7 or 8 years ago when I was a teenager, listening to my local rock station. But you get songs like Get Up and Jump, If You Want Me to Stay, Hollywood, stuff like that, stuff that's not on the later day greatest hits records by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I believe there's like 2 more greatest hits records that they put out. There was one in 1994, I think, that doesn't really get talked about, and of course there's the classic one that came out in '02, I believe, or that came out later than that features the stuff from Californication and features By the Way and stuff like that. Pre Danny California, pre Stadium Arcadium, which was like their last huge record, apart from the one that came out the first one that came out in 2022 that went to #1. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that little section or whatever um, of those records, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry that this is very long. I want these videos to be like almost a free form discussion. You can drop whatever you want in the comments below regarding these topics. I want this to be like an ongoing once a month or twice a month video project or video series. It's almost like a reward for you guys watching. If you guys want my take on something or just want to see some of the records that I have in my collection. Now, yeah, so before I end the video, I forgot to talk about these two. And if you guys want to see a follow-up to this topic, to greatest hits or best ofs, I have a lot in my collection. I have almost 500 LPs and 300 CDs. I've been collecting since I was 14. I had a lot more, but I, weeded out my collection last year to make way for newer albums and pieces and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk about these two vinyl best ofs, or these two compilations on vinyl. We have Rod Stewart's Greatest Hits Volume 1, which this is long out of print. I believe this has been out of print since 1985. This was one of the first records that I actually got. And I got this when I got my turntable for Christmas back in 2018, or 2017, I believe, when I started collecting vinyl full time. And if you guys want to hear how I got into vinyl and stuff like that, leave that in the comments below. I'll do a video on that. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this one is that it's very interesting to me. I'm not a huge fan of this band for various reasons, but they are somewhat an important band when it comes to Southern rock music and the Southern rock legacy that features bands like the Allman Brothers and stuff like that. The Allman Brothers, the Byrds, Molly Hatchet, 38 Special, stuff like that, and that is Lynyrd Skynyrd. And now everyone knows who Lynyrd Skynyrd is, and I do enjoy some of their music. I don't like, I don't like the band, if you know what I mean, to some reasons, and I don't want to start anything by bringing that stuff up, but, just, the stuff that they stood for I didn't really agree with, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy the music. I'm a fan first and foremost, and if something moves me, I'll add it to the collection, and, I don't want to start anything in the comments or whatever, but, yeah, anyways, moving forward, this is a really good compilation, and this is all of their stuff that was gold or platinum certified, and this came out, I believe, almost right after Street Survivors, and the tragedy that happened with that, the losing, the lead singer and like half the band, the really sad story that happened, because Lynyrd Skynyrd were a force, they have a lot of great songs, a lot of great, rock anthems and stuff like that. What's Your Name, Give Me Three Steps, That Smell off of Street Survivors, Whiskey Rock and Roller, Simple Man, of course, Tuesday's Gone. They have a lot of great songs. And it was a shame that they didn't get to carry on with that original band. I know later on they carried on, and they're still carrying on to this day, which is fantastic. But it's a shame that, that the original band members and the lead singer wasn't there to be with them. Because I believe his name was Ronnie. He was a very, very talented singer. And it's a shame that, he passed in that accident. And this features a really cool gatefold insert of the band, a really cool illustration. And this has been out of print forever too. And I found this, at my local thrift store, one of my local thrift stores when it first opened. Um, and I thought I had to get this for the collection. You know, a lot of songs in here that I like that, you know, I've heard down south when I used to live down there, and a lot of classic songs. You know, Sweet Home Alabama, Free Bird, stuff like that. It's always good to have one early Leonard Skinner record, or one kind of early period, 70s period Leonard Skinner record that combines everything, or just is one of their most popular records. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Of course, you know, you might not agree with my opinions in this video, and that's okay. We all like what we like, and yeah, you know, I want to hear what you guys like in the comments below. I want to hear what your guys' favorite compilation records are, or what cool memories you have of buying compilation records. Yeah, so without further ado, um, thank you guys for watching. I just want to say thank you for all the support recently. Um, if you aren't subscribed yet, please subscribe and hit that bell below. And yeah, catch you guys on the flip side.